everyone, and welcome to this brand new discography ranking today. And today, of course, we are going to be covering the groove metal titans themselves, Pantera, an absolute hallmark band in the history of the metal scene. This band has had a significant impact on my life over the past 10 years. I discovered them at the young age of 13 and they were one of the first bands that I ever got into, and from that young age I spammed some of their albums and really got me into the music that I love today, so I have a lot to thank for this band. Today we're going to be ranking all 9 of their studio albums, so yes, that does include their Pantera era, but we're going to get straight into it and rank all of Pantera's albums from my personal least favourite starting to my personal favourite at the end. So with that said, let's get into it. Starting at the number 9 spot, my personal least favourite, I'm afraid it has to be their debut album, Metal Magic. Now, anyone who's obviously familiar with Pantera's albums will have a rough idea on what the bottom 4 albums of this video will be, and then what the top 5 would be. That isn't to put down the early work of the band, but it's just that their later albums, and we'll get to those, left such a fucking strong impact on the metal genre as a whole that there just isn't any competition really between like the bottom 4 and the top 5 in my opinion. But talking about Metal Magic, it's the band's first album, and when you're starting out as a band you really shouldn't expect the world on your first attempt. That's not to say I hate the album, there are some heaters on this thing. The thing about this album is that the band very much is wearing its influences on its sleeve at this stage. So you hear a lot of the 80s glam and heavy metal in this album. Like there's a lot of Dokken and Maiden. Ride My Rocket, though that is a really stupid name for a song, has a very Judas Priest sounding vibe to it. I'll Be Alright is just laced with Halloween influences. So it's clear they haven't really stepped out of the shadows of what inspired them to start music. Oddly enough, I kind of dig the use of synths on this album. I think they're very, very well placed in songs like Biggest Part of Me and Tell Me If You Want It. I just want to fucking say though, these song titles. What the fuck, Terry Glaze? Speaking of Terry Glaze, his vocal work is pretty solid, he hits the notes, but my fucking god, the fucking lyrics are so stupid. But obviously, the best thing about this album is Dimebag's guitar work, especially in the title track and Widowmaker. Dimebag is the overachiever of this band, he always has been, and even on their first album, when I think Dimebag recorded this when he was 17, don't quote me on that, he fucking knocks it out of the park. At that age, well fucking done, man. But there you go, there's Metal Magic, my personal least favourite of the band. Now moving on to the 8th spot, my second least favourite, which is I Am the Night. Continuing in the theme of the Pantera era, where their first album was maybe a little bit less glam and more just 80s heavy metal, traditional, Priest style, Iron Maiden style, etc. This album is heavy with its glam metal influences, holy crap. Like with the song Hot and Heavy, that fucking song just sounds like it belongs on the Judas Priest Turbo album. Onward We Rock sounds straight up like Def Leppard. DGTTM feels like a bit of a pointless track to have on the album. It's just a minute build up to fucking nothing in my opinion. Daughters of the Queen also feels a tiny bit cookie cutter generic for my taste. There's nothing particularly wrong with the song. Those are like the main criticisms of the album, but there is a lot of stuff to like on this album. Let's go through it. I really enjoyed the descending riff on the title track. Come On Eyes is a very strong song, and Dimebag's solo in there is just a pure chef's kiss. Right on the Edge's riff is a straight up earworm. Are you noticing a pattern of what I like most at the moment? It's just Dimebag. The song Valhalla has strong elements of like speed metal, and it sounds like it would belong perfectly on the Judas Priest Painkiller album, or maybe in like Ram It Down potentially. And then Forever Tonight has a really cool like slower tempo and has like a really slow groovy tone to it. I enjoy that one. But yeah, that was I Am the Night, another decent album. It's good, it does get better evidently. Speaking of, at the number 7th spot on my list, we're getting to ones that I'm starting to like a lot more now. We have Projects of the Jungle, their second album I believe. Between the first and second album, that being between Metal Magic and this, the bass work improves massively. This album obviously still has a strong glam metal style to it, though it does feel like the band wanted to step out the shadow of the influences on this album compared to their first one. All Over Tonight has a very strong British new wave sort of vibe to it. Out for Blood has elements of speed metal. Blue Light Turning Red is just an excuse for a Dimebag solo, and I'm not going to complain. I will also say the title track, Projects of the Jungle, might be one of my favourite Pantera songs. I'm not even kidding. That double kick drum holds a really nice energetic tempo that matches with the chuggy guitar rhythm that's going on. Dimebag's solo in Heavy Metal Rules is also fucking excellent. Also, Like Fire and In Over My Head, those songs just sound like the best songs that Kiss never wrote. Heartbeat Away is also a good achievement on this album. It mellows out in some sections, but also speeds up in others. It's like a classic stomping heavy metal anthem, but then obviously, like I say, transitions into more of like a power ballad. And then as for the song Killers, which isn't an Iron Maiden cover, yeah, I'm sad too, is the first case in which you hear elements of thrash metal in the band, dare I say. Taking My Life isn't exactly a strong closer for the album though, sadly. It tries to be a power ballad but kind of misses the mark for me personally. With most of the songs on this album though, there was at least a few things that I did actually enjoy from it. So, well done. For how young they were making this album, well done guys. Alright, now for the number 6 spot. We have power metal. The first album with Phil Anselmo, and out goes the glam terror, and in comes the thrash metal. Well, kind of. It's kind of like a fusion between the glam and thrash, in my opinion, which is an interesting thing to experience, I won't lie. Rock the World has the same style and ethos as the glam era of the band when they were going full force into that direction, but with a heavier guitar tone, and also with Phil Anselmo's vocals being in there, it does add an element of just heft to it that wasn't in the band before now. Hard Ride shows exactly how much better suited Pantera is with Phil Anselmo's vocals. Dimebag's solo in We Will Meet Again is fucking gorgeous. PST 88 and Over and Out both feel fast, thrashy and chuggy. The breakdown in Down Below is fucking awesome as well. But then Proud to Be Loud recaptures that British new wave energy that is on some of the earlier albums. But then the title track and Death Trap like both lean into that heavy, thrashy energy that the band is delving into at the moment. And as for the song Burn, the guitar rhythm once again is catchy as fuck. But yeah, power metal, another massive step up for the band. Now we move into the top 5. Now, this is the part that might get controversial just because these next 5 albums are pretty much sacred to anyone who knows anything about Pantera. But just know, this is just my opinion, so try not to get pissy about it. And if you have a different ranking, put it in the comments and tell me how wrong I am for this next 5 spots. Alright, at the number 5 spot we have Reinventing the Steel. Now, jumping way ahead now to the year 2000 with the band's final studio album. This album takes all of the elements of the era that made them popular, which we're getting to later in this video. It's like the stuff from Cowboys, they borrowed stuff and put it in here, but also from Vulgar as well. Hellbound is a fun, heavy opening track. Goddamn Electric has a slow chug that sounds like it was like a B-side from Far Beyond Driven. Yesterday Don't Mean Shit has a lot of energy to it and feels like it belongs on Cowboys. The guitar tone on You Gotta Belong to It sounds really different, but it honestly makes for a really catchy hook. And I always catch myself humming the galloping lead in the song Revolution Is My Name. As for the song Death Rattle, that song has some high-octane riffage and is just a freshy fucking monster. Same with Grind That Axe for a super long time. Uplift has a heart-thumping drum beat. The bass is expertly used in It Makes Them Disappear. That's a really, really good one. And of course, I Cast a Shadow has a really cool bouncy riff with a nice creepy tone to it, and it is a really cool way to close the album, I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, that was Reinventing the Steel at the number 5 spot. Now moving on to the number 4th spot. And that is, get those hate comments ready to post, Far Beyond Driven. Now I know this album's sacred, and I know it made it to the Billboard #1, so you don't have to remind me. But these top 5, maybe top 4 if you're being picky, could be interchangeable for a lot of people, and same when it comes to me, honestly. I love Far Beyond Driven. I listened to this shit at a very young age. This was one of the albums that I listened to which got me into heavier music. Anyway, let's actually talk about it, shall we? This album leans heavy into the groove metal style. The album comes out swinging with the song Strength Beyond Strength, grabs my attention instantly. As for the song Becoming, such a fucking earworm. 5 Minutes Alone and I'm Broken have heavy groovy riffs to them, and obviously they're anthems and everyone knows and sings along to them whenever they're on. They really managed to build some serious tension in the song Good Friend and a Bottle of Pills, as well as Hardline Sunken Cheeks with its heavy, dense atmosphere. Slaughtered is an angry beast of a song, and the Chug in 25 Years just delivers multiple gut punches to the kidneys. Never thought I'd make an analogy like that, but I guess it's Pantera. Shedding Skin's riff is straight up just infectious. Couldn't get it out of your head if you tried, but I don't want to try. It's a great riff. Use Your Third Arm, though that's a funny title, has some seriously fast shredding in it. Same with Throes of Reflection. Also, shout out to the Planet Caravan cover. Great song. But yeah, that was Far Beyond Driven. Now we move on to the number 3 spot. Now, when I said these top 5 or top 4 or top 3 even now, these albums can literally be interchangeable for me because these next 3, I fucking love these albums, okay? These 5, top 5, I love them so much that my opinion on which one goes first changes like the fucking wind. But we're gonna talk about the Great Southern Trendkill now. This album sounds like the fucking angriest of their career, and that was mostly due to the tensions within the band at the time, which is kind of the only reason why this is third and not first, because of the context behind why this album sounds so angry. Because I love fast, heavy, angry music. This is perfect, pissed off, angry teenager music, which is probably why it appealed to me. But the context behind why it was obviously makes you feel like, oh, why is the band falling out? You know. But anyway, let's get into the album. The title track is just a straight bullet train, just roaring straight through your eardrums. War Nerve is slow, deliberate and creepy. Drag the Waters has an intense groovy riff as well. Ten's slow, creepy riff like gets in my head all the time, and once it's in there, it never leaves. 13 Steps to Nowhere is also a very, very vicious song. Now I want to take a second to talk about Suicide Note. So, Suicide Note, both part 1 and part 2, I think is Pantera's crowning achievement. Though there are 2 albums that top this one, Suicide Note as a microcosm is one of my favourite things that's in music ever. Both parts are great. Part 1 is mellow and serene and calming, but also a bit creepy in parts. And then part 2 is genuinely one of the heaviest songs ever listened to. And when I heard it for the first time when I was really young, I was fucking terrified. It was the heaviest thing I'd ever heard on the face of the planet, and that effect still hasn't gone away to this day. I have gone to music heavier, I've gone to Bloodbath, I've gone to Cannibal Corpse, Napalm Death, Dark Throne, you name it, and there is not much I've listened to that to me sounds harder than Suicide Note Part 2. And I've also not heard much in music that sounds more emotional than Suicide Note Part 1. I'll stand by this till the day I die. Suicide Note, both Part 1 and Part 2, are one of the most beautifully written musical pieces of all time. I don't care what you say. Your opinion's invalid if it isn't agreeing with me, alright? At least for Suicide Note. Alright, I'm done ranting about that song now. Right, now on to Living Through Me, parentheses, Hell's Wrath. That song was one of the first metal songs I'd ever heard, and so there's a very strong sense of nostalgia attached to that for me, which is why I love it, I guess. Floods is also a perfect song. Just putting that out there. The atmosphere is just dripping with creepy tones. The shredding is glorious, and in my own personal opinion, one of the only things that holds this album back is the fact that I think Flood should have been the closing track. And then Underground in America has a cool, dynamic, catchy riff to it. And then the transition from that song to Sandblast Skin is fucking brilliant. I love that transition. And then with that final song, when you think it's all done, it slowly fades out. But then the album rewards those loyal fans that are waiting for something else as it comes with a fade back into a lovely, cool close. It rewards those loyal listeners that were sat through that minute of silence hoping there'd be more. So there you go, that was Great Southern Trendkill. Was it obvious I liked that album? The praising and nerding out and gushing only gets bigger, because now we're moving on to my number 2 spot, which is Vulgar Display of Power. One of the first albums I sat through from front to back. This album is just a straight 50 out of 50. The thrashy energy that the band had with power metal and Cowboys, mixed with the groove metal sound that they're moving into at this stage, is perfectly blended together. Obviously the groove metal will be developed further in Far Beyond Driven, but for here, like I say, the groove is perfectly placed because the band still wants to implement the thrash metal sound that they've been doing recently, at least in context to when this album came out. Mouth of War was a straight up explosive intro. A New Level has a crawling lead that just gets stuck in my head all the time. Walk might be one of the most iconic metal songs of all time, and the stomping rhythm and lead is just infectious, dude. Fucking Hostile is like the name suggests. And then as for This Love, it starts as a nice, soft ballad, but then forms into a slow but heavy, and when I say heavy, I mean it, chuggy rhythm. And then also shout out to the chorus of that song too. Rise is a fucking fast, angry monster of a song as well. And as for No Good parentheses Attack the Radical, the chorus in that song is just infectious. There's great bass and rhythm work in Live in a Hole. And then Regular People parentheses Conceit has a really cool heavy groove as well. And then as for the final two tracks, I adore these. By Demons Be Driven's guitar tone is just so unsettling sounding. It's fucking great. And then as for Hollow, Hollow is another one of my favourite Pantera songs of all time, so go figure, I'm going to sing its praises for a sec. It starts out as a beautiful, sombre ballad, and then it closes out as a heavy, angry ripper. Every song on this album is amazing. There's zero skips on this thing. I mean, like I've said for about the entire top 5, there's pretty much no skips on any of these albums. You could stick on any song from like the iconic Pantera albums and you wouldn't be disappointed. But there is one album that must stand above the rest, and to me, my number one, obviously you figure it out by now, is Cowboys from Hell. Now, as I said, this top 2, top 3, top 4, top 5 could have been interchangeable. Any one of them could have been number one potentially, but the reason that Cowboys is because it was the first for me. It was the first album by Pantera and one of the first metal albums period that I discovered and listened to all the way through. It was this, then Vulgar Display of Power, then it was Great Southern Kill, then it was Far Beyond Driven, and then, like I say, it was Reinventing a little bit later after that. Which obviously explains the order that I ranked this top 5, huh? Like I said with Vulgar, this album as well, and even more so in my opinion, has zero skips. Every single song on here I've listened to so many times, it's fucking stupid. Even though this album is known for its thrashy energy, you can still see hints of where the groove metal will come in and make the band famous with Vulgar and Far Beyond Driven. It's just this album leans more into the thrashy energy that the band was leaning into with the previous album, Power Metal. In my opinion, that leads for the perfect blend, which this album has. A nice spritzed in decent bit of groove, but a nice healthy dosage of thrash. The title track gives a hype, explosive intro, and like I said with Walk, but even more so with the title track, Cowboys from Hell, it's iconic, and everyone knows it, and if they don't, then they should. The bass is good, the solo is gorgeous, the vocals work perfectly. It's just a masterful song, dude. As for Primal Concrete Sledge, that song has a really dense rhythm, but such a fucking ferociously fast chorus. The solo is fucking awesome too. Psycho Holiday and Clash with Reality both have really cool groove-laden melodies to it, which goes back to what I said, how there are still elements of groove metal in this album. They are just a bit smaller than what they would be in later albums. And obviously it goes without saying, the breakdowns on those two songs are fucking nasty. Heresy has a fast, groovy rhythm to it. As for Cemetery Gates, that song is the perfect ballad. And it's not even just a straight ballad. It ebbs and flows, there are calm moments, then the riff comes in and makes you feel just like you want to fucking punch someone. Don't actually do that though. Just listen to the song again. You'll have much more fun. And as for the breakdown on Domination, my fucking god, that's one of the heaviest things on the face of the planet, dude. That's like any guitarist's wet dream. Scattered is fast and angry. Medicine Man has a really cool crawling lead to it. And there's some really fucking awesome atmosphere building on The Sleep and Message in Blood. And then of course, The Art of Shredding, in my opinion, is the most fitting way to close out this album. Just simply put, because it encompasses everything that was so great about this album. The fucking shredding, but also the vocals, the energy, the speed. It's just all so fucking great. I love it. this album is not just my favourite Pantera album or one of my favourite thrash albums or whatever else. It's one of my favourites, period. This album has lived in my top 10 favourite albums, top 5 probably favourite albums of all time, consistently, ever since I first heard it. At the time, this album, when I first listened to it, was one of the heaviest, angriest pieces of music I'd ever heard, and I was just infatuated with it. And so I had to hear more, which is how I later discovered Vulgar Display of Power and Great Southern Trendkill, Far Beyond Driven. You get the idea. And so I owe so much, not just to Pantera as a band for creating this amazing music, but also to this album specifically for getting me started. So, yeah, that's it. I'm done talking about Pantera now, sadly. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video nonetheless. If you disagree with my rankings, then suck your mum. My opinion is the only correct opinion. But in all seriousness, leave your rankings in the comments below. I would like to compare and contrast where other people rank these albums. I'm pretty sure that a lot of people will rank the top 5 as the ones I've put, just maybe in a slightly different order. But that's neither here nor there. The top 5 are fucking amazing albums, and that's not to dog on the Glamterra era either, because, like I say, power metal, fucking great. I sang its praises in this video. Same with Project of the Jungle. Less so a bit with I Am the Night and Metal Magic, but there's still stuff to like on those albums. But there you go. That's it. I'm gonna wrap up this video now. I hope you enjoyed it, and I guess I'll see you in the Sepultura album ranking whenever that comes out. Hopefully soon. So look forward to that, and I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.